UFC Fight Night on ABC4, Rozenstruik versus Almeida takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Jessica Rose Clark versus Tainara Lisboa. I'm going to go with Lisboa over Jessica Rose Clark. I just don't believe that Jessica Rose Clark really cares about her career. She's had a bunch of injuries recently. She's had her arm snapped so often in her fights recently. I feel like she suffered 2 arm bars in a row that were really nasty in her career, and in her last one it got really badly hurt. So she's had some time off. I just don't see her beating Lisboa. Now, you would say maybe Lisboa with her Muay Thai style is going to have some trouble with the wrestling here, but we've seen that Jessica Rose Clark really doesn't have an amazing ability in the wrestling. And one thing that I noticed from Tainara Lisboa was the fact that she has some really nasty knees in the clinch. She fought Norma Jamon years ago in 2016, and she was taken down in that fight eventually and choked out. But before she was taken down by Norma Jamon in both of their debuts, she scrambled a couple of takedowns early on. Like, Norma Jamon was trying to get her down, and she was defending against a cage and landing really nasty knees to the body and stuffing a lot of the early takedowns until one of them got through and she didn't really know what to do and ended up getting submitted. But I think since then, she must have picked up some wrestling skill. It's been 7 years since that moment. I'm going to go with her to beat Jessica Rose Clark with knees to the body in the clinch against the cage. I think she'll finish her that way. We move on. Up the card, Gabe Green versus Bryan Battle. I am going to go with Bryan Battle over Gabe Green. I don't mind Gabe Green's chances, I'll be honest with you guys, but I think Bryan Battle got dealt a very bad card in his last fight against Rinat Fakretinov, who was able to out-grapple him for every single round of their fight and even drop him on the feet in one moment as well. I think if you don't put him against Rinat Fakretinov, he can beat the Gabe Greens of the welterweight division, beat Takashi Sato with a nasty head kick, beat Tresean Gore in a decision, who's a big dude, big solid dude in the middleweight division, and that was a fun scrap back and forth, and he ended up getting that one done. Won the Ultimate Fighter. Let's not forget, like, he had some really nasty wins on the Ultimate Fighter as well. He beat Impa Kasanganay in his amateur career as well. He's had some good moments. Beat Andre Petrosky on the Ultimate Fighter. I think he's a pretty underrated fighter, and I think he'll find a way to win a decision against Gabe Green, who is good, but is just sort of good at staying slightly behind his opponents. And if the only real way he beats people is if they can't keep up with his pace, I think that maybe Bryan Battle's going to be able to keep up with the pace over 3 rounds. He doesn't seem to slow down too much, and I think he'll pick him apart for 3 rounds to a 30-27 decision. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Yeon Kim versus Mandy Bohm. I'm going to go with Yeon Kim over Mandy Bohm. I like Yeon Kim's striking. I've liked her last few fights. I know she has lost to some, like, not the best opponents, in all honesty. Lost to Jocelyn Edwards by split decision, lost to Priscilla Capoeira, got robbed in my opinion, lost to Molly McCann. That was a very close fight as well. But she can scrap, and she can make it a tough decision, and she's got a 72-inch reach as well, which isn't a huge advantage over Mandy Bohm, but we just haven't really seen anything great from Mandy Bohm. Lost to Ariane Lipski. Not really too much of a shame there, but in my opinion, losing to Victoria Leonardo is a massive and absolute disgrace. You should not be losing to Victoria Leonardo. I don't care the circumstances. I've got to go with Yeon Kim here over Mandy Bohm. I reckon she'll get this one done by decision. We move on up the card to another fight. Natan Levy versus Pete Rodriguez. I'm going against the masses. I was going to pick Pete Rodriguez before. Now that I know he's had a bit more time to prepare, I'm going to pick Pete Rodriguez again. I think he's got nasty hands. I think he's got good boxing, but people don't think he does because he went up against JDM, and obviously you're not going to look like you have good boxing when you're trying to box with JDM, but he was landing some decent shots on the chin of JDM in that fight, and he's a dangerous dude, powerful hands. I can see a lot of holes in the boxing of Natan Levy, and we've seen him in his last few fights fight very pace-setting opponents, and he's been in trouble against Rafa Garcia, where he got outworked as the fight went on, against Mike Breed in a similar situation where, you know, he just sort of survived the cardio and the pressure of Mike Breeden, survived the cardio and the pressure of Gennaro Valdez. who broke his foot in that fight at some point as well, and he's been able to mix it up against them. I don't know how he's going to do against a dangerous knockout artist in the first round, because he does make a lot of mistakes with his hands, and he does have some good kicks. He mixes it up well, but I can see him going for one of those kicks and getting clipped right on the chin by Pete Rodriguez and put away. So I'm going to take the underdog here of Pete Rodriguez getting a KO in the first round against Natan Levy. I like his hands, and he's got good power as well. We move on. Up the card, Carlos Ulberg versus Ihor Potieria. Mismatch in my opinion. Absolute mismatch in my opinion. A lot of people are going with Ulberg here. 91% of people are going with Ulberg. I have no idea why they made this matchup. He literally just beat the guy who beat Potieria, and now he's fighting Potieria. Makes no sense. Arguably should have been like a Rozenstruik rematch on the last weekend's card instead, but oh well, they've gone with this one instead. I'm going to have to go with Carlos Ulberg getting a KO here over Ihor Potieria. I like Ihor Potieria. I think he's a cool style fighter, and I think he's young and he's got a chance to improve in his career, only 26 years of age. I just think Ulberg is more complete than him on the feet as of right now in their career, and the stark differences of how they dealt with the striking in the Nikolai Negumereanu matchup is a massive sign of that, I think, as well. So I'm going to have to go with Carlos Ulberg here. Gonna have to go with Carlos Ulberg. I don't know how much I rate a win over Shogun Rua at this point in Ihor Potieria's career. And before he got the finish, it wasn't like he was absolutely schooling him. So I'm gonna have to go with Ulberg, and I think I'm gonna go with Ulberg getting a TKO in round 2 or something along those lines. Maybe late in the first round instead. We move on. Up the card, Cody Stamann versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. I'm gonna go against the masses again here, I think. I think I am going to have to go against the masses again. I'm leaning towards Douglas Silva de Andrade. I don't know about the Luan Lacerda win and the Eddie Wineland win. Am I really going to put too much stock into that? This guy got smoked by Said Nurmagomedov, and Douglas Silva de Andrade gave Said Nurmagomedov all he could handle in that fight. Beat Sergey Morozov. Perello wasn't a great win, but he got a finish in the first round with ease. Had a good. He got beaten by Lerone Murphy, but he kept it competitive throughout that fight as well. I think he's an underrated Terminator in this division, and I think now that he's back at bantamweight and making weight consistently, I think he's going to give these guys some problems, especially Cody Stamann, who I can just see getting in the pocket. He has to be in the pocket, Cody Stamann. This is the problem that I have with this matchup for Cody. I know he can wrestle. I don't think he's going to be able to keep Douglas Silva de Andrade down. I don't see that happening. He has to be in the pocket to trade because he's got such short arms, 64.5 inches of reach compared to 68.5 of Douglas Silva de Andrade. He's going to be in the pocket with, in my opinion, a way more dangerous man in the pocket who's way tougher. And I think I'm going to go with Douglas Silva de Andrade getting this one done by decision, 29-28, dropping Stamann in a few of the rounds. We move on. Up the card to another fight, which is Karl Williams versus Chase Sherman. I'm going to go with Karl Williams here over Chase Sherman. I was going to pick him on the previous card that they were supposed to be on. I believe it was UFC 287. It got a little bit extended, and in my opinion, that only benefits Karl Williams, who was taking it on a very quick turnaround. He got a win against Bursky on March the 11th. Was going to be fighting on the 8th of April on short notice. It got cancelled. He's got another whole month to prepare for this matchup. And Chase Sherman, I guess, is going to have a chance to try and adjust to now facing a wrestler instead of his original opponent, who was Chris Barnett. But in my opinion, I don't think it's going to make a difference. And I think that Karl Williams is going to be able to take down Chase Sherman and even do okay on the feet in moments as well. I think Chase Sherman has a stand-up advantage, but you can't deny he has one way of losing most of the time, and that is by being taken down and beaten up on the ground. And I think that's exactly what Karl Williams is going to do. Plus, Sherman's had a lot of miles on him as well, so I don't think that's going to help him out in this matchup either. I do believe in the Williams takedowns, in my opinion. He's got good technique for a heavyweight, and he shoots good takedowns. I think he'll be able to beat Sherman if he can beat Bursky, who can push a better pace than Sherman, in my opinion, and is a little bit more slick on the feet. We move on. Up the card, Matt Brown versus Court McGee. Got to go with Matt Brown over Court McGee. The differences in how they're doing in their recent careers is pretty night and day. Like, Court McGee's had some wins, to be fair. You know what I mean? Against Ramiz Brahimaj, Claudio Silva. Claudio Silva's an old testosterone-less man, but the Ramiz Brahimaj win was pretty good. But then, you know, it's tough. They both lost to Carlos Condit, but just the way they've been looking in their recent matches. Split decision to Bryan Barberena. That's nothing to scoff at, and he looked great in that fight as well, and some people thought he won. I thought he lost, but some people thought he won that matchup. Jeremiah Wells just smoked Court McGee by KO, and he's been out for 11 months. I know Matt Brown hasn't been too active either, but in their recent performances, he's looked a lot better than Court McGee has. I know it's Jeremiah Wells, but I don't like when an older fighter like Court McGee at 38 years of age is coming off a brutal KO loss in a scrappy fight that they're next going into against a guy like Matt Brown. If this gets scrappy, I'm going to side with Matt Brown getting this one done by KO. So I'm actually going to pick Matt Brown by KO in the second or third round here against Court McGee. I think that maybe Court McGee's run out of the tough points compared to Matt Brown, and if push comes to shove, I think Matt Brown will be the one pushing and shoving, if you know what I'm saying. So third round TKO to Matt Brown is what I'm going to go with here. I think that's a pretty logical prediction to make. We move on. Up the card, Tim Means versus Alex Morono. Again, another logical prediction in my opinion. Alex Morono, I think, is going to win this matchup. He's had a training camp for this one, which is very big for Alex Morono because normally he's the guy stepping up on short notice to save fights. You know, he did that against Santiago Ponzinibbio and was winning the entire fight until getting caught in that third round. Hasn't taken much time off, but he has taken 5 months, so I'm not worried about him taking too much damage. He beat Matt Semmelsberger in a mostly stand-up fight, which is very impressive. He's beaten Zawada, Mickey Gall, not too impressive, but Donald Cerrone finished him in the first round back then. I think he'll be able to get this one done against Tim Means, who's, I noticed in his last fight, I know it was a close fight with Max Griffin, but I noticed this in his last fight. He seems a lot slower on the feet. You know what I mean? I don't see him out wrestling Alex Morono, and I still see the hand speed for Alex Morono being a problem here. Plus, I think if it goes to it, Alex Morono's going to have a lot more cardio than Tim Means to push when he needs to. And I think that's what it's going to come down to here. Toughness points, cardio. Tim Means got hurt badly by Holland on a few occasions in his last fight. Had a tough scrap with Griffin. It didn't really end up. It ended up being a wrestling match at one point, right? Don't see him being able to use wrestling against Alex Morono. I see him getting finished on the feet. Maybe as the fight goes on, or maybe there'll be a dominant decision win for Morono here, 30-27. We move on, up the card to another fight, which is Daniel Rodriguez versus Ian Machado Garry. I am speeding through this card right now, and I've only just realized that. So I'm going to take my time with these next few fights, if you don't mind me. Daniel Rodriguez versus Ian Machado Garry. I'm going to go with Ian Garry. I think he's got a really good chance of winning this fight against D-Rod. One thing I've got to point out against D-Rod is he's a very boxing-heavy fighter, and he stands very heavy on that lead leg. We saw Li Jingliang, who's not much of a leg kicker really target the legs of D-Rod, and that was like a short-notice put-together matchup for both of them. But we saw him chopping the legs of D-Rod, and, you know, he's arguably on a 2-fight losing streak right now. I did think he lost that Li Jingliang fight, but he stepped up on short notice, so it is what it is. Lost to Neil Magny and showed some terrible fight IQ in that fight. And also, the only way he was having success against Neil Magny was when he was doing his jab 2 and stepping in with the pump on the jab. And Neil Magny was just backing up in a straight line and taking those shots. Ian Garry moves so much for a welterweight. I'm not saying that he's going to be a future champion, but my mind has definitely changed about him. I know he got caught in his last fight by Song Kenan, but he recovered and came back and put on a great performance. If he doesn't get caught, all we're talking about is how sick he looked against Song Kenan. The calf kicks and leg kicks he was landing, the setups he was landing for those calf kicks and leg kicks were amazing. And I think he's going to be able to do the same thing against D-Rod in this matchup, which I don't think favors D-Rod whatsoever. You know, he's broken his hands a few times now in his career. He's 36 years of age, you know, coming up to 36 and a half. Ian Garry is going to be matching him in reach, I believe. They both have the same reach against each other. D-Rod's used to having a bit of an advantage in that regard. I just think that this is a really smart fight for Garry to take because he doesn't have to worry about takedowns, which is going to be his main problem and has been against the likes of like a Darian Weeks, who kept trying to take him down in his debut. And even Gabe Green at times was trying to take him down, but he ended up picking him apart on the feet instead. If he doesn't have to worry about takedowns against D-Rod, which he doesn't, I think he's going to chop up that leg and start outboxing him. Maybe not outboxing him, but just giving him more to worry about, man. D-Rod is going to be boxing against Ian Garry. Ian Garry is going to be boxing, But in the middle of all of it, chopping the leg, inside leg kick, stomping the leg, teep to the body, front kick to the body, couple head kicks get whipped up out of nowhere, couple body kicks as well, couple elbows on the inside, calf kicks, leg kicks again, inside, teep, front kick. He's just going to be overwhelming D-Rod with options on what he's going to attack with. Whereas I think he's going to realize real soon that D-Rod is either looking for a counter hook as he comes in, which is what D-Rod does, or he's looking for a jab, or a jab 2, or a jab 2. That's what D-Rod does on the feet, and I think that's why Yeon Garry is so confident in taking this matchup. And I also think there's a reason he's confident in taking this matchup, because he was training Li Jingliang for the D-Rod fight. If you remember that, Li Jingliang was working at Killcliff. He was doing some work over at Killcliff, and Yeon Garry must know, if Li Jingliang's schooling him on the feet in the gym, he's like, I don't want to fight D-Rod. D-Rod did okay against Li Jingliang, you know what I'm saying? But he must be like, I'm kind of getting the better of Li Jingliang when he's not trying to take my head off. Maybe in a real fight, Jingliang would land the KO punch that Song Kenan couldn't. But I think that Yeon Garry's like, I really do out-technique Li Jingliang in the gym and pick him apart. I think I'm going to be able to do the same to D-Rod. And Li Jingliang throws more different techniques than D-Rod, so it's a bit of an easier matchup for Garry. I'm going to go with Yeon Garry getting this one by decision, 30-27, and looking slick as fuck doing it. We move on. Up the card. Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. Wish this was the main event. It's actually the co-main event. And I'm going to go with... Oh my God, who am I going to go with? I'm going to go with Johnny Walker over Anthony Smith, I think. I've seen a different type of Anthony Smith recently in his career. And it's hard to really say that. But in the Ankalaev fight, maybe he was injured going into it. But he just sort of like looks a bit too hesitant and stiff on the feet at times. And I know he caught Ryan Spann coming in and was able to finish him off. I just think there's like, he didn't look in great shape for when he tried to make weight for the UFC card at the start of the year. I didn't like that too much. He's doing the podcasts here and there, getting up there, 34 years of age. I know he's got some pop in his hands, but it's really just one fight with Ryan Spann that we're basing that on. You know what I mean? It really is just one fight with Ryan Spann that we're basing that pop in his hands on. Now, I know you don't need much to KO a Johnny Walker. I just think Johnny Walker's going to have a ton of athleticism over Anthony Smith. Maybe I would have liked the Smith choice a bit better if it was a 5-rounder. But if it's a 3-rounder, I think it favors Johnny Walker. And he's so athletic in those grappling positions. I don't see Smith being able to, 1, take him down, 2, really like dominate him on the ground. I think that Johnny Walker's going to be able to pop back up when he needs to. We saw him hit a bunch of reversals against Nikita Krylov, and that was quite a long time in Johnny Walker's career now as well. I like this for Johnny Walker, dude. Anthony Smith's got some long arms on him. I don't deny that. Johnny Walker's still going to have a 4-inch reach advantage, 6-inch reach advantage over Anthony Smith. 76 inches of reach. We've got Johnny Walker with 82, 6-inch reach advantage for Johnny Walker. Looked okay against Santos. Again, not the best of performances. He looked very jittery, but he looked technical and composed. And it's a Johnny Walker with momentum again. You know what I mean? His recent fights, he's been struggling to get momentum. And he's on a 2-fight winning streak now. He got a rear naked choke against Kutalaba, which not many people are submitting Kutalaba. They TKO him, you know what I mean? He got a win against Paul Craig after Paul Craig tried to take him down. Finished him on the feet with a right hand and then hammer fists over and over again. I just think if we end up in a bit of a scrap, I kind of trust Johnny Walker to get it done. I could actually see Johnny Walker hurting Anthony Smith to the body with like a front kick or a knee in the clinch or an elbow in the clinch, maybe to the head. I'm not sure, but I do see more finishing potential for Johnny Walker. I think he's on the up right now. I think he has slightly improved. I do worry about Smith's technique being a problem for him, but I don't see Smith finishing him immediately, and I see it getting a bit sloppy in some moments. So I'm not going to go with Anthony Smith here. I'm not going to side with Anthony Smith. I've just noticed the body of Anthony Smith has gotten less and less toned. Are you seeing that as well? I noticed that with a few other fighters before I started to see their inevitable decline. But I've seen with Anthony Smith's body, there was a time when he had like decent chest genetics, decent pump to him as well, like he had good muscle definition, and it seems like his body's gone all flat. Saw it in the Ankalaev fight, saw it in his weigh-in for the Jamal Hill fight as well. He just seems to be carrying a bit more body fat. Maybe that testosterone's starting to drop at 36 years of age or 34 years of age in the light heavyweight division. Not to mention, his record is 36-17, and he's been doing this since 2007. You know what I mean? Like, eventually it's got to give. And I'm going to go with Johnny Walker, 31 years of age, got momentum, ton of confidence. I think he'll get this one done by TKO in the first round. I can see him finishing Smith and Smith having some stupid excuse for it. We move on to the main event, which is actually a pretty easy prediction to make in my opinion. I'm going to go Jailton Almeida over Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I don't see a way you don't pick Jailton Almeida here. I just want to check what people are picking on Tapology. 89% are in favor of Jailton Almeida over Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I've got to agree with them a little bit here. Like, I know he hasn't really fought the best of opponents, but Shamil Abdurakhimov has a grappling background. You know what I mean? He has experience in grappling. He's just not athletic whatsoever. So he can't really deal with grapplers going after him as much, especially one the level of Jailton Almeida, who is a sauce monster. Let's be real. He is on the sauce. He's on a ton of sauce. He's on really good sauce. He's got stuff growing out of his forehead. He's got acne all over his face. Like, this guy is a lab experiment from Brazil. And I think he's going to be a problem for the heavyweight division if USADA don't get there first, is all I'm going to say about that. He actively competed in grappling tournaments throughout his career. He beat Baralho in a grappling tournament as well, which is pretty impressive in my opinion because, you know, he then submitted Nasruddinov on the Contender Series, who was a guy with the name Nasruddinov, who had a great grappling background. He managed to submit him in the second round after some resistance early on. But he beat Baralho, who's a middleweight and a great grappler. Beat him in a grappling tournament earlier on in his career. Had some problems earlier on. Got KO'd once earlier on in his career. Lost a decision in 2018 as well. But I do believe that with his recent momentum, he's going to keep carrying it into this Rozenstruik fight. And although Rozenstruik is pretty strong at the hips, I do see Jailton Almeida getting this one done. Now, Rozenstruik, if you're watching, I'm just going to say this right now, and this is proof that I've been watching some Jailton Almeida fights, and I think you know what I'm about to mention. Rozenstruik, if you see Jailton Almeida throw a front kick to the face, you throw an uppercut immediately after that kick comes back to the ground. If you see Jailton Almeida flick a little kick to your face off of his leg, off of his right leg, little front kick to the face, you time an uppercut immediately. I don't care if you don't trust it. As soon as that front kick retracts, after he throws it in your face, you load up the nastiest uppercut or knee of your entire life because he's shooting a takedown afterwards. He has done it every single fight in his recent career. I feel like he's done it like 6 fights in a row. He goes out there, throws a front kick to the face. Soon as it hits the ground again, he shoots a double leg. He brings the front kick up to maybe make the opponents raise their hand and then shoots underneath. I'm telling you, Rozenstruik, as soon as you see that front kick early on, knee up the middle, uppercut, whatever you've got, make it happen. You know what's coming next. But I do believe that Rozenstruik's going to win. I knew he'd beat Dorcas Rozenstruik. I do believe that Almeida's going to win. I do believe that Almeida's going to win. I don't rate a win over Dorcas. I never did. I always thought Dorcas was going to get exposed at some point at heavyweight, and now he's going to get beaten up by Khalil Roundtree again. I've got to go with Jailton Almeida. Jairzinho Rozenstruik looked somewhat lost on the ground against Overeem, who is experienced, I get that, but still, we saw him on the ground against Blades. I just think the same ability to get to the ground is going to be met by Jailton Almeida, but the difference is between him and the other opponents, his finishing ability in the jiu-jitsu department is going to be way too much as well. And I think now that he knows he's committing to heavyweight, we might see him come in a little bit heavier for this matchup. You know what I mean? He last weighed in at 232. I think we're going to see him at 236, 237, knowing that he's got to try and pick up a big dude here in Rozenstruik. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'm going with Jailton Almeida by first round TKO or submission. I think he's going to beat Rozenstruik, and if USADA don't get to him, he might end up beating everyone. Toodle pip. See you later. Goodbye.